Dear friend, before we begin today's journey, I invite you to take a small moment just for yourself. Perhaps you are lying in bed after a long day. Perhaps you have dimmed the lights, preparing to close another busy day. Or perhaps you are searching for something nameless, yet deep within, you long for a little peace. If so, you have come to the right place. Tonight, we shall not rush. There is nothing that must be completed, no goal that must be achieved. We have only this breath, this heartbeat, and this full, present moment right here. In this video, I will guide you through a journey of 30 small parts. Each part is a story, an image, a slice of life where I, as a companion on the path of meditation, will seek beside you. Together, we will gently look into the quiet worries within, the restless nights, the soft inner voice that whispers, "I'm not good enough," and the simple joys we sometimes drop along life's path. You need not understand everything. No need to awaken to anything. No need to strain yourself to become more mindful than anyone else. You only need to sit or lie down and breathe. Let my words, like the gentle steam of morning tea, softly drift into the space within you. And know this, here, you need not carry any more burdens. Perhaps you will drift off to sleep midway. That is perfectly fine. It is a sign that your mind is beginning to release, learning how to rest more deeply. Or perhaps you will remain awake, listening through each part. That, too, is wonderful, for you are choosing to stay with yourself, no longer running away. And now, as you are ready, I invite you, breathe in slowly and breathe out deeply once more. And once again, when you feel your body lighten, even just a little, and your mind ease, even just a little, allow me to guide you into the first part of this journey. We shall begin unhurried, like a small, quiet river flowing through the night. When night gently descends like a soft curtain drawn by the earth and sky, I often place my hand on my chest and quietly ask, have I truly lived today? It's not a question of success, nor a tally of accomplishments. Rather, it is a gentle reminder like tea, rustling of leaves outside the porch, asking whether I have truly been present in each fleeting moment. Many years ago, a student came to see me. His face was weary, as if he had traveled far and long, yet still hadn't arrived where he needed to be. He said he couldn't sleep. Each night, his mind was like a bustling fair thoughts, regrets, worries, hopes, all jostling for space. Refusing to leave, I invited him to sit. We shared a quiet silence. Then I told him about something called a religionless religion, a path without signposts, without deities to cling to, without dogma to defend. Only one thing matters, one's own direct experience. When the Buddha was asked metaphysical questions, who is God? Where did the universe begin? What happens after death? He often remained silent. Or he would respond with another question, guiding the seeker back to what is present here and now. I asked him, when you're sad, have you ever sat down and touched that sadness? Or do you reach for your phone, scroll through the internet, play music, call friends, just to bury it? He said nothing. I invited him to try not to confront the sadness, but to sit with it, like a mother sitting beside her ailing child, not needing to say anything, only to be present. We often think we need to understand everything in order to find peace, but sometimes peace comes from accepting that some things don't need to be understood. I told him about a man who spent his life longing to reach the heavenly realms where gods live long, happy, untroubled lives. But when he finally arrived, he discovered the gods, too, worried, grew angry, felt uneasy just in a more beautiful, lasting setting. So he returned and realized no place in this world is a perfect refuge if the heart still harbors storms. We keep searching for another shore, another place, another identity. But have you ever paused and wondered, what if everything you're seeking is already here? In this very breath? That night, I didn't teach him how to meditate. I simply invited him to lie down, close his eyes, and listen to the sound of his own heartbeat. Not for any purpose, not to fall asleep quickly, not to silence the thoughts, just to listen, nothing more. And I said, let the sound of your heart lead you back to the old home, the place where all emotions are allowed to exist, without judgment, where nothing needs to change, only to be recognized. Oh, in that small room, the wind gently rustled the bamboo leaves outside. He fell asleep not because he understood all the truths, but because, for the first time, he stopped trying to. We don't need to understand to be at peace. We only need to be present. I sat there a little longer, then closed my eyes, letting the night's softest lullaby breath of the earth and sky drift into my mind. When the heart is at peace, everywhere is home. In a morning in autumn, one early autumn morning, I was invited to visit a house nestled in a quiet countryside. The man who lived there was over 70 years old. Throughout our conversation, he kept returning to one thing. He was afraid of dying, not of a painful death, but of a quiet as if his life would vanish without a trace. Teacher, he said, I've lived kindly, worked hard, never harmed anyone, but I'm not sure if any of that means anything. I didn't respond right away. I simply asked him to take a walk with me around the garden. We passed by a cluster of wild chrysanthemums that were withering. The petals had turned brown, and the stems bent downward, as if offering a final bow at the close of the season. I asked him, do you think this flower feels sad as it fades? He smiled softly. Uncertain. I asked again, do you think this flower would only be worthy of being called beautiful if it had bloomed more brightly, lasted longer, or been admired by more people? He shook his head. I said, then perhaps your life is the same? End of chapter. We are often haunted by the belief that we must somehow rise above fear, above failure, above ourselves. But sometimes there's no need to rise, just to see clearly that everything changes, that everything we try to hold onto, youth, reputation, meaning is like grasping sand. The tighter we squeeze, the faster it slips away. One of the Buddha's earliest teachings was about the nature of suffering, not that it comes because we experience bad things, but because we want all the good things never to change. We don't suffer because winter is cold. We suffer because we want spring to stay. We don't suffer because our hair turns gray. We suffer because we want to stay young. A friend of mine, once highly successful, told me he felt as though he was licking honey off the edge of a knife. I asked why. He said, everything I achieved excited me for a few days, then faded. First it was the car, then the apartment, then the fame, but none of it ever made me feel full. I said to him, it's not because those things have no value. It's because you're trying to fill a hunger that they cannot satisfy. Am satting. He gave a sad smile. Like a hungry ghost? I nodded. In Buddhism, there is an image of the Preta realm, where spirits have large bellies and narrow throats. No matter what they eat, they never feel full. But I believe hungry ghosts aren't just myths. They live within those who have much, yet always feel they lack. The issue isn't in having or not having. It lies in where we believe our enough will come from. I turned to that old man in the garden that day. I said, "Maybe no one will remember your name, but if you can sit here, quietly, look at a fading flower, and smile then, you have lived more deeply than many who are busy out there." End quote. He didn't respond. He simply bent down, picked up a fallen petal, and released it to the wind. We stood together in silence for a long time. No more words were spoken. Only his shadow stretched along the stone path, blending into the wild grass, then dissolving into the sunlight, as if it had carried nothing with it. You don't need to leave behind a grand legacy. It is enough if you pass through this life with a heart that remains open and eyes that still know how to behold a fading flower. It is enough if you stop running away from yourself. We don't need to rise above, only to see clearly and to walk together in that seeing. Long ago, when I was a young novice, newly ordained at the temple, I would often sit quietly beside the well after study hours, not to drink or wash my face, just to look at my reflection on the water's surface. One day, an old teacher passed by. He asked, "Are you looking at someone?" I replied, "I'm looking at myself." "Oh," he smiled. "Which self are you looking at?" I fell silent. Since childhood, we've been taught, you are this, you must be that. This is your name, your personality, what you should do to be loved, to be accepted, bit by bit. Each teaching, each expectation wove together a garment called me. Oh, I'm a rational person, and I am someone who worries, and I am a failure, and I am a good person, and this garment grew so thick, we mistook it for our own skin. But something strange happens. Each time you sit down in stillness, doing nothing, not trying to prove anything, you begin to notice that garment starts to slip off your shoulders. You don't need it, and it doesn't need to cling to you. When the Buddha attained enlightenment under the Bodhi tree, he did not declare, "I am great," and he simply exclaimed, "How marvelous! All beings have Buddha nature within," and which means there is no self that needs to be constructed, only the true nature that needs to be recognized. There's no need to tear down the old to build the new. Just remove the veils placed upon us by society, the past, our fears and desires, whether by accident or intent. Once, someone asked me, "How do I let go of the ego?" I said, "Can you release something you've never really seen clearly?" The ego cannot be let go of through effort, because the one making the effort is also part of the ego. It's like a shadow trying to pull itself off the ground. So instead of trying to let go, try to look, sit down, close your eyes, and ask, who is the one thinking right now? Who is the one feeling hurt? Who is the one trying to become? And keep that question in your heart, like holding a small candle in the night. No need to answer right away. No need to analyze with the mind. Just hold it. And gradually, you'll discover something peculiar. Each time you can observe the ego, you are no longer it. In a midday meditation session, I once told the practitioners, we are not our thoughts. We are not our emotions. We are the space in which those thoughts and emotions arise and pass. Just like the sky is not the clouds. Clouds come and go. The sky remains vast, still, and embracing. You are not the anger. You are not the fear. You are not the past. You are the silent backdrop witnessing all those things as they arise and dissolve. A man once asked me, if I'm not anyone, then what am I? I asked back, how can a fish know what water is if it has never left the stream? And I invited him to stop searching for an answer. Just live the question, as if not knowing is the path itself. You don't need to define yourself. You don't need to chase an ideal image. You only need to return. Return to the gaze without judgment. Return to the immediate sensations in the body. Return to the breath, the one thing that has never needed a name. And there, no ego needs holding. Only a current of life flowing gently, naturally, complete in itself. Are you being someone? Or are you simply being as mist, as rustling leaves, as a soft breath passing through the late afternoon? I once had a young student, very intelligent, but also full of worry. Before every presentation, he would break into a cold sweat. Each night, his mind turned into a flashlight, beaming constantly onto the worst possible scenarios. One day, I asked him, when you worry, what is it that you fear the most? He answered, I'm afraid of being judged, of failing, of not being good enough. Our end, I said. If we invited fear to sit down for tea, would you be willing to sit with it? He looked at me. Puzled. Sit with fear? For what? I smiled. To see that it doesn't have the fangs you think it does? Quote. We live in an age where fear is ever present, not in the form of tigers anymore, but hidden in unanswered emails, in others' glances, in the first wrinkle appearing on our forehead. Fear isn't terrifying because it's ferocious by nature. It's terrifying because we've never truly looked it in the eye. We often run by overeating, run by binge watching, scrolling endlessly, run by staying busy, trying to become somebody. Quote. But the more we run, the closer fear seems to follow. It's like a shadow. You see it most clearly when you turn away from the light. I invited my young student to sit in meditation with me, not to push away anxiety, but to recognize it. I guided him. Close your eyes. When fear comes, don't push it away. Ask it, what shape do you have? What color? Where do you live in my body? After a while, he whispered, it's like a heavy stone on my chest. Gray. It makes it hard to breathe. Olekt, I asked. Does it change when you observe it? He said, yes, it feels a little lighter, like it's melting slightly. Olekt, and I said, that is the key. Fear is only strong when we ignore it or fight it. When we quietly observe it, it begins to soften. Olekt. Zen does not teach us to conquer emotions. Zen simply invites us to be present, not to analyze or reason with them, but to be with them like a friend, sitting at the bedside of someone who is ill, saying nothing, just resting a warm hand on their shoulder. When we sit with fear like that, we come to see something simple. Beneath the waves of chaos, there is a still lake waiting. You don't have to make fear disappear. You only need to stop being afraid of fear itself. One of my favorite sayings from Thich Nhat Hanh is, the breath is the bridge between the body and the mind, the anchor that brings us back to the present, and Each time anxiety arises, return to the breath not to escape fear, but to breathe with it, like a father holding his crying child, not to silence it, but to hold it in warm embrace. And slowly, the sobbing ceases. After many months of practice, my student changed, not because he was no longer afraid, but because each time he felt fear, he knew how to greet it like greeting an old friend. Hello, fear, I see you. I won't run away today. And in that presence, fear no longer ruled him. You can try this tonight, before sleeping. Instead of curling up in restless thoughts, place your hand on your chest. I feel the heartbeat, and whisper, everything within me is allowed to be here. I will no longer run from myself. You don't need to chase away the darkness. Just light a single candle. One torrentially rainy day, I received news that an old friend had just passed away. We hadn't seen each other in many years. His death wasn't sudden, but when it happened, it still left a hollow space in my heart. That afternoon, I brewed a pot of tea. I poured out 2 cups, one for me, one for him. I sat by the window, quietly sipping each sip, as if he were still there. No need for words, no need for explanations, just to be present. One more time. Death for so long has been seen as something gloomy, terrifying, to be avoided. Modern society teaches us to do everything to stay young, live long, conquer disease. But few teach us how to die. Not in the biological sense, but the art of a gentle farewell, of a life cycle closing like a fragrant flower, falling only when its scent is complete. During a retreat, someone once asked me, "Aren't you afraid of dying?" I asked in return, "Are you afraid of the evening?" The evening? No. I love evenings. The air is gentle, the sunlight soft. There's a certain peace to it. I smiled. Then why can't we see death as an evening too? Death is not an ending. It's merely a turning, like the sun setting behind the mountains. Not because it ceases to exist, but because it's now lighting the other half of the world. I once sat with someone who was near the end. We didn't say much, just held hands. His breath became sparse, like a short poem approaching its final line. Then he opened his eyes, looked at me, and whispered, "Thank you for not being afraid to sit here." I knew he wasn't afraid of death. He was only afraid of being left alone in that moment. And I stayed, not to do anything grand, but simply to say, through my presence, I see you. I am here. You won't go alone. Zen doesn't teach us to escape death, nor does it promise a definite afterlife destination. Instead, it invites us to touch death while we are still alive, so we may live more truly, more deeply. When we truly face impermanence, we begin to cherish every morning of sunlight. We begin to treasure those still walking beside us. We begin to see that today's anger might be the last words we ever speak. In Zen language, there is a beautiful phrase, "Die before you die." Not physical death, but the death of the old self of clinging, fear, identity, control. When we can die in this way, each day, then the final death becomes a familiar friend, a return, not a rupture. I often tell the young, live like a candle burning from both ends, not to exhaust yourself, but so your light can shine fully without holding anything back. A human life, in the end, isn't measured by years, but by the brightness of the moments lived with sincerity, when you understand that nothing lasts forever, you will love more, forgive more, let go more gently. You won't wait for a perfect day to live truly. You will begin now from this very moment, right now, because perhaps this is the last time you'll see a raindrop fall on the rooftop, the last time you'll hold your mother's hand as she sleeps, the last time you'll hear your own laughter on a breezy afternoon. Death takes nothing away. It only reminds us. Live. Once, during a sharing session with a group of young people, I asked, if you could wish for one thing right now, what would it be? One said, I want a lot of money. Another, I want to find true love. Someone else said, I want to be free. I nodded. These wishes weren't wrong. They were very human. Then I asked, and if you get what you wish, for what then? A quiet silence slowly filled the room. We live in a world where desire is the main fuel. Everything around use advertising, social media, even education whispers, you're not enough. Want more. I want to be more beautiful, smarter, richer, more loved. Want a more complete life according to a formula, someone else wrote. And so we run. We chase goals. We chase ideals. We chase the endless when I that never comes. When I have money, I'll be at peace. When I find love, I'll be happy. When I succeed, I'll slow down. But having lived through many of those when I moments, I can whisper this to you. There is no destination that truly satisfies. The Buddha once likened chasing desires to licking honey off the edge of a blade. The honey is sweet, but soon the tongue bleeds. Desire isn't bad, but without awareness, it slices into the heart invisible wounds that cut deep. There are people who spend their entire lives chasing happiness through possession only, to end up with an empty room and a withered heart that never knew enough. I once met a woman who had everything: fame, success, beauty, but her eyes were always sad. She told me, I feel like I'm always chasing something. When I reach it, it slips away, and I chase again. End quote. I asked, what would happen if one day you stopped running? She broke into tears. I don't know. Maybe I'm afraid of being still. Afraid of stillness, not because it's frightening, but because it might reveal something, that the things we chase might not truly bring happiness. Desire is like a wind. When we're light as a leaf, but when we grow roots, we simply sway then return to stillness. Zen doesn't teach us to renounce all desire in the name of austerity. It simply invites us to look at desire with curiosity and gentleness. When you truly look, you'll see every desire holds within it a loneliness. Every craving is a call to return but has lost its way. Instead of chasing desire, ask, what lies beneath this want? What am I really needing? You may discover, behind the desire for money is a longing for safety. Behind the desire for love is a yearning to be understood. Behind the desire for fame is the need to be seen, to be acknowledged. And then you'll realize these things don't need to be purchased through constant escape. They can begin in how you see yourself right now. Tonight, instead of setting a new goal, I invite you to sit down and ask, what desire is stirring in my heart? If I didn't follow it, would I still be me? And if you feel emptiness, that's okay, because maybe, for the first time, You're stepping off the boat of endless longing and setting foot on a new shore where you are no longer steered by the winds of wanting, but simply watching the river flow in stillness to truly see one another. One morning, I was invited to participate in a partner meditation session for couples. As part of a simple exercise, I asked them to sit facing each other and just look. No speaking, no forced smiles, no attempts to fill the silence. Just gaze into each other's eyes for 5 minutes. At first, there were giggles, awkwardness, but then the room slowly settled into a gentle silence. A woman began to cry. The man sitting across from her wept too. After the meditation, she said, "Today, for the first time in 10 years, I saw the man truly sitting in front of me, no a role, not a memory, but him in this very moment. We live together, yet rarely see one another. We love someone then, attach labels to them. He's hot-tempered. She always complains. He's indifferent. My parents are so old-fashioned. And each time we meet again, we no longer look with fresh eyes, but through the dusty lens of assumption. They change, but we don't notice. They fall silent and we interpret it in the same old ways. Gradually, we end up living with ideas of each other, rather than with each other. Zen invites us to see everything as if for the very first time. This is the eye of the beginner's mind. When you look at your mother as if seeing her for the first time, you may notice the new silver strands in her hair, the wrinkles at the corners of her eyes, and hands that are no longer as swift. When you look at your beloved with new eyes, you may see behind today's coldness is an unspoken sorrow. I once asked a meditator, "What hurts you most in a relationship?" She replied, "When I feel I'm not being listened to." End of tree. I asked, "Have you ever truly listened?" She went silent. Listening is not just waiting for the other person to finish. Listening is removing the invisible headphones playing your own voice, rebuttals, judgments, rushed replies. Listening is an act of compassion, because when you listen to someone fully, you're saying, "You are worthy of being here, just as you are, without needing to be fixed." End quote. In a Dharma talk, I once shared a classic Zen story. 2 elderly monks were walking past a muddy path. They encountered a young woman dressed beautifully, hesitant to cross for fear of soiling her clothes. One monk picked her up, carried her across, and set her down. They walked on. Hours later, the other monk could no longer hold it in. "We're monks. Why did you carry a young woman like that?" The first monk smiled. "I set her down right after the mud. Why are you still carrying her?" Often, we carry others in our minds far longer than they ever existed in our reality. A sentence, a gesture, a facial expression, we hold it like a stone in the heart, while the other has long since moved on. Tonight, I invite you to try something. Look at someone close to you as if you were about to say goodbye, not to grieve, but to truly see the life manifesting in the breath, in the eyes, as a very real part of this world. No past, no role, no person who should make me happy. I see you. Today, here. I love when, stripped of expectation and control, returns to presence. No need for the other to change. Just be present enough so they can be wholly themselves in your gaze. I once met a young writer, stuck inside his own pages. He told me, "Every time I sit down to write, there's this voice in my head that says, Who do you think will read this? You're not good enough. You're wasting your time and everyone else's. And I didn't say much. I simply asked, when you hear that voice, have you ever asked yourself, who is listening? He froze. Within each of us, there is a voice like that. It doesn't need to shout. It lurks like a shadow behind every decision. It shows up when we're about to step out of our comfort zone. When we speak of love, when we try something new, when we fail, and sometimes, even when we succeed. I'm not good enough. End of I'm just a fraud. End of what if they knew the real me? That voice isn't evil. It's simply the condensation of old wounds, moments of criticism, comparison, and conditional love. And it survives on a special kind of energy, our belief in it. Zen does not teach us to silence that voice, because the more we fight it, the stronger it becomes. Like shouting into an echoid, only comes back louder. Instead, meditation invites us to listen to it differently. When you hear the voice in your head say, "You're worthless," try responding, "Thank you. I know you're afraid, but I don't need that kind of protection today." I once told the young writer, you don't need to banish the voice. Just invite it to sit outside your writing. Let it speak, but don't let it hold the pen. There's a small practice I often share. Give that voice a name. Call it old teacher, or misdoubt, or judgy aunt, whatever suits you. This creates a gentle distance between you and that shadow. You begin to see, I'm not the voice. I'm just the one hearing it. Like hearing traffic on the road, you don't have to run out and clear the street. Just know it's present. End purse. Self-acceptance doesn't happen all at once. It's a daily choice to sit with yourself, even when your heart is unsettled, to act kindly toward yourself, even when you don't feel worthy, to speak a gentle word to yourself like you would to a dear friend weeping in your arms. I once asked a group of elders, if you could go back and say one thing to your younger self, what would it be? A retired man, eyes glistening, whispered, I'd say, you're okay. Stop trying to be someone else. I love you. He had never heard those words in his life, but that day, he said them himself. And the miracle was, though late, it's never too late to begin healing. Tonight, if that familiar voice returns in your head instead of following it, try placing your hand on your heart and softly say, I hear you, but I won't follow you tonight. I'm learning to stay with myself like a true friend. And if your heart grows a little keener, that's already a miracle. Not because the voice has vanished, but because you're no longer its prisoner. One weekend afternoon, I visited an old friend. He lived in a high-rise apartment, fully equipped, premium speakers, a massive television, shelves lined with perfumes and whiskey like a miniature museum. As I stepped in, he chuckled awkwardly. The place is a bit messy, don't mind it. Oh, I said nothing, just looked around. So many things, and yet the air felt still, like the quiet after a glass shatters sand. No one bends to pick it up. He sat down, poured tea, and sighed. I have everything, yet I don't feel like I'm truly living. How modern society teaches us a subtle message. If you're unhappy, buy something, a new pair of shoes, a smart kitchen gadget, the latest phone because the old one is outdated. How we don't buy because we need. We buy because we feel something is missing, and we hope the new thing will fill that vague emptiness. But once the item is unwrapped, once the thrill fades, that emptiness returns, quiet but sharper. Zen does not oppose material things. Zen simply asks one question: are you consuming or being consumed? Do you own that item, or is it defining who you are? Do you own your home, does it rob you of the time to simply sit in stillness? I once lived in a tiny rented room with just a teapot, a few books, and a thin mattress, but I never felt lacking. Because when the mind isn't scattered by everything out there, we begin to see what we truly have: a sky, a breath, a drop of water, a moment of peace. A friend of mine once decided to get rid of 70% of his belongings, not because he was poor, but because he was tired of cleaning, maintaining, organizing, and thinking about them. When the house emptied, his mind also opened. He said, "At first, I thought I was letting go, but later, I realized I was reclaiming my space to live." I often invite students to meditate on these questions. Does this give me freedom or take it away? If I didn't have it, would I still be myself? If the answer is no, perhaps you don't own it, it owns you. There's a small yet powerful habit: delay shopping for 24 hours. When you feel the urge to buy something, don't buy it right away. Write it down. Set a reminder for the next day. Then ask, do I really need this? Or am I trying to soothe a feeling? Often, you'll find you've forgotten about the item altogether, and you'll know it wasn't a need, just a passing wave. Simplicity isn't poverty. Simplicity is living with choice, with awareness, with enough space to breathe. Tonight, look around your room. No need to clean right away. Just look and ask, what here is serving my true life, and what is just taking up space outside? And inside, maybe you won't throw anything away, but you'll start to see more clearly. And that clarity itself is already a gentle beginning. There was a time when I stood at a busy intersection in the city. People were moving fast, very fast. Everyone seemed in a hurry, eyes fixed on their phones, ears filled with earbuds, their steps steady, but their hearts seemed to be racing. I paused, closed my eyes for a moment, then opened them just to watch a single leaf falling. Someone brushed past me, turned, and asked with a puzzled look, "Why are you just standing there?" I smiled and replied, "Because when we don't even know where we're going, sometimes stopping is the kindest thing we can do." End quote. In an age where speed is celebrated as success, living slowly is almost seen as outdated. If you're not busy, people assume you're useless. If you don't hustle, you fall behind. If you don't do more, move faster, stay constantly updated, you're out of touch. But have you ever asked yourself, where are we all rushing to? Toward a more perfect self? Toward an ideal life that hasn't arrived? Or are we simply running to avoid hearing the emptiness within? Zen doesn't condemn movement, nor does meditation encourage stagnation. What meditation invites is mindfulness within each movement. You can still work, you can still strive, but you are no longer swept away. You know when to pause. You no longer see rest as weakness, but as a profound act of courage. I once met a successful man, always busy, a jam-packed schedule, call after call, smartwatch, smart desk, smart car. But after sitting in meditation with me for just 10 minutes, he said, I feel like a phone with 40 apps running in the background. I still function on the outside, but inside I've been overloaded for a long time. Slowing down doesn't mean doing less. It means doing one thing with your whole heart. When eating, just eat. When washing dishes, just wash. When walking, just walk. And the miracle is, when we live with that kind of fullness, each moment becomes so rich, we don't need to do anything else to feel alive. Thich Nhat Hanh had a beautifully simple practice I've always loved, the mindfulness bell. Endure. Every time you hear a beller, any familiar sound, a phone ringing, a car horn, running water, you pause. Pause for a breath. Pause for a thought. Just to return, just 1 second. But enough to keep you from being swept into the next thing, forgetting that the present is the only place we truly live. I often remind students, meditation isn't about sitting for an hour. It's when you know you're breathing even for one breath. End of tonight. You can try. Eat dinner 10 minutes slower than usual. Take a walk without headphones. Before sleeping, breathe in, breathe out, and ask, was I truly present with life today? If the answer is not quite, don't be hard on yourself, because that question itself is awareness beginning to bloom. No one is forcing you to live slowly, but sometimes, when no one is pushing you, and you still choose to slow down, that's a sign. Your heart is waking up. If your chest feels a bit more spacious, your breath a bit deeper, smile, because you've just taken a gentle but very real step on the path back to yourself. The truth that rises after the fall. One autumn afternoon, a man came to me, utterly exhausted. He had just suffered a major fall in his career. A cherished project failed. His company collapsed, and his partner walked away. He sat across from me, eyes weary, hands clenched. "Teacher," he said, "I feel useless, as if all my efforts amounted to nothing." "Oh?" I didn't reply immediately. We both looked at a golden leaf, slowly falling to the ground. I asked him, if that leaf can no longer cling to its branch, does that mean it has failed? He sat in long silence. In the modern world, success is often measured by peak show, much money, how many likes, how many people know your name. Failure is something kept hidden. People only speak of it once they've overcome it. Oh, but Zen offers another view. Zen does not see failure as an end. It sees it as a kind of shadinga, peeling away of the self-image, revealing something deeper, more real, more tender. In my experience, great falsif, you don't rush to rebuild your image. Often open doors that success never bothered to knock on. When you fail, you have nothing left to protect. And it is precisely then that you might touch the truest part of yourself. Not the self you wanted to become, but what remains when everything else has fallen away. Once, I told this student a familiar Zen story. A man dropped his beloved ceramic bowl. He grew angry, full of regret, blaming himself for his carelessness. An old man nearby picked up the shards, placed them in his hands, and said, "Nothing is meaningless if you learn to look closely." Endest, the bowl broke, but your hands did not, and your heart, if still soft, can hold anything. I told him, failure doesn't make you worse. It only strips away the outer varnish, so you can see the real grain beneath. Zen has a beautiful concept, wabi Sabbath, beauty of the imperfect, the incomplete, the weathered. In the Japanese tea ceremony, a cracked teacup isn't thrown away. It is mended with gold, The crack becomes part of its historia, part of what makes it unique and beautiful. You are the same. Each time you break, if you don't reject the brokenness, you learn to mend yourself with compassion. No need to hide, no need to prove anything. Just a human being, learning to breathe after the fall. I invited my student not to list his mistakes, but to write down what he had learned about himself from the fall. At first, he couldn't write anything, but after a while, he wrote, "For the first time, I realized I'm not my work. Then I've started to cry, and I realize crying isn't weakness. And finally, I feel lighter, even if the road ahead is still unclear." End place. Tonight, if you carry the weight of some failure, try placing your hand on your chest and say, "I'm still here, still breathing." And that is enough to begin again, not rushed, not forced. End place. Failure, through the eyes of Zen, is not a bad ending. It is the falling away of what is no longer real. And in that open space, what is true finally has a chance to grow. I once sat beside a woman who was losing her father. She didn't cry loudly, but her eyes looked like a dry well. She told me, "I don't know what to do. Every word of comfort feels meaningless. All I feel is a vast emptiness." I didn't respond right away. We sat together in silence. A soft breeze passed through the hospital window, and I shared with her a story. Long ago, a young novice asked his teacher, "When someone you love dies, how do you not feel sad?" The teacher smiled. "Don't try not to be sad. Let sadness become a bridge. And through that bridge, you'll see they're still here, just on the other side." End 4. Zen does not teach us to avoid sorrow, nor does it urge us to let go quickly. End 4. Zen teaches us to stay with whatever remains after someone we love is gone. The warmth has faded, the breath has ceased, but love, if we don't try too hard to hold, it will spread on its own. Like the fragrance of tea after it's poured. I once lost a dear friend. Instead of forcing myself to forget, I chose to brew a pot of tea each month, just like we used to. That cup of tea wasn't for mourning. It was to invite my friend to sit with me again for a little while, in the form of memory, of breath, of gratitude. I didn't try to see him. Just by not forgetting to sit with myself, he was already present. In Zen, there is a beautiful practice called touching the absence. And when someone is gone, you don't need to do anything special to keep them near. You simply need not reject the emptiness they left behind. Let that space breathe. Sit with the absence as you would sit beside a letter, unfinished. No rush, no explanation needed, just presence. Many have asked me, do those who pass away still exist? I often answer, they no longer exist in their old form, but they haven't disappeared. Like a flame that has gone out yet, its light remains in the room. Its warmth still felt on the skin. Its ashes still drifting in the wind. You don't need to prove it with philosophy. As long as you still love, they are still living, in a nameless form. I told the woman who was losing her father, if your father had one last thing to teach, perhaps it would be this. You can learn to live on, not because there is no pain, but because within the pain, love still remains. She cried, but this time, they were tears without resistance. Tears of someone still loving, even when the hand can no longer be held. Tonight, if you are missing someone who's gone, I invite you to try something simple. Sit quietly for a few minutes, close your eyes, breathe gently, and whisper within, you are still here in me. You don't need to move past the pain. You only need to let it walk with you as a kind and gentle shadow. Separation, through the eyes of Zen, is not the end of love. It is a new phase of connection, deeper, quieter, and unexpectedly tender. Once, during a tea meditation session, a young woman asked me, "I know comparison is useless, but I can't stop. My friend just got promoted, found a new partner, bought a house, and here I am, still struggling with every step. I'm not jealous, it just makes me feel small." I nodded, not to affirm the suffering, but to tell her, what you're feeling is deeply human. We live in a strange age where people only share their most beautiful, successful, radiant moments. And every day, we hold a mirror not to see our own face, but to compare it with countless others. That person has a happy family. Another has a glamorous life of travel. Someone else has a perfect body, a mindful lifestyle, eats vegan, does yoga, meditates every morning, and USA version, still fumbling, still full of shadows. It's easy to feel like a faded dot. Zen doesn't say that comparison is wrong. Zen simply invites us to ask, what is the purpose of this comparison? If it leads you back to caring more deeply for yourself, then it's a healthy reminder. But if it makes you shrink, hate yourself, lose trust in your own path, then it's no longer illumination, but rejection. I shared an image with a young woman. Imagine a garden. Some flowers bloom early, some trees grow slowly. There are thorny cacti and delicate vines, but no plant ever asks, why am I not like the one next to me? They just live at their own rhythm. Hell, you are the same. You are not late. You are simply growing in your own season. Jealousy doesn't usually come from malice. It comes from the pain of not yet seeing your own worth. We see others shining and forget we, too, carry a light, even if it hasn't been lit yet. I invited her to do a small practice. Each day, write down 3 things she is grateful for about herself. Not grand things, just, today I didn't interrupt anyone. End of phrase. I was patient with my mom when she repeated an old story. End of phrase. I didn't skip breakfast. End of phrase. A month later, she returned. There was something softer in her eyes. She said, I still compare, but now I know I also carry some kindness. End of phrase. Tonight, if you feel less than someone else, sit quietly for a moment and whisper, I don't need to bloom like others. I just need to keep my roots strong and tend the soil I stand on. End of quote. You may not be that dazzling sunbeam over there, but you can be a small light enough to brighten a quiet corner in someone's heart, or your own. One of my students once messaged me in the middle of the night, Teacher, I'm not sad. I'm not happy either. Nothing special has happened, but I feel empty, like I'm floating between everything and nothing. End of quote. I read that message and sat in silence for a long time, not because I didn't know what to say, but because I knew that feeling all too well. Emptiness is something many people experience, especially when everything on the outside seems fine. You have a job, you have friends, you have a place to return to. And then, one evening, for no clear reason, you feel like you're standing in a vast house with all the lights turned off. Not cold, not warm, just nothing. Zen doesn't rush to label that as a problem. Zen invites us to sit inside that very dark room, No need to flip the switch. No need to rush out and find something to do. Just sit and listen to the silence that's never been listened to. In Zen tradition, there's a beautiful image, the empty bowl. That bowl isn't useless. It's only truly useful because it's empty. Only when empty can it receive. We are the same. Sometimes, the feeling of emptiness is not a sign of loss, but a preparation for something yet to arrive. A pause, a breath between two chapters. A morning with no bird songs, so the wind this afternoon can be heard more clearly. I once told that student, try not to fill the emptiness with movies, with phones, with calls. Just sit down, close your eyes, and ask, "Dear emptiness, what do you want to tell me?" At first, you might hear nothing, but if you're patient enough, you'll see emptiness is not empty. It just hasn't found its name yet. One day, I meditated beneath a silent tree. No birds, no wind, no human voices. I thought I was in a place of nothingness. Oh, but then I heard my heart beat so clearly, and I realized, oh, everything is still alive. I just hadn't been quiet enough to listen. We often confuse silence with loneliness, emptiness with meaninglessness. But take another look. Aren't all precious things born from a space of emptiness? Before a baby is born, there's the emptiness of the mother's womb. Before a song begins, there's absolute silence. Before you know what you truly want, there's a stretch of life where you're not sure at all. Tonight, if your heart feels hollow, don't rush to fill it. Befriend that emptiness. Sight down. Place your hand on your chest. Take a deep breath and whisper, "I don't need to be full to be alive. I just need to be quiet enough to realize that I am alive." Oh, an empty room might be where tea begins. A silent pause might be the door to a new encounter with yourself. One morning, while we were sitting together having tea, a young friend asked me, "Teacher, do you ever worry about the future? I keep thinking about tomorrow work, money, aging, illness. I feel like I'm living in the next day, and I can't see today at all." I remained silent and poured more hot water into his cup. Steam rose gently, forming tiny, glistening droplets on the lid of the teapot. I said, "You just missed something beautiful. A drop of water fell yet you didn't see it." Oh, we spend much of our lives caught in things that haven't happened yet. Worried we won't succeed. Worried they'll leave us. Worried we'll get sick. Grow old. Be left behind. We call this planning, foresight, responsibility. Oh, but rarely do we stop and ask, what is the cost of all this worrying? Is it the very life that is here now? I once had a student who was highly successful. He managed hundreds of employees, planned everything meticulously in his retirement. But one quiet evening, during a meditation session, he began to cry. He said, "Teacher, when was the last time I truly saw my daughter smile? I've been so focused on her future. I forgot she's growing up every day without waiting for me to notice." Zen doesn't oppose planning. Zen just reminds us, don't confuse the map for the territory. You can draw the path, but don't forget to notice the flowers along the way. You can prepare for tomorrow, but don't miss the spoon gently touching your cup this morning. The present is the only place you can actually touch. The past has already passed. The future hasn't arrived. Even a moment from now, no one can promise it will come to you. Only this moment. And strangely, this moment is always enough. You might be breathing without realizing you're breathing. eating without really tasting, listening to music, but your mind is already at tomorrow's meeting. And then one day, when the things you feared never come to pass, you realize, I survived fears that were never real, but I missed so many real things that truly happened. I once told a friend, we don't need to search for peace. We only need to pause long enough to realize it's always been here. Here's a simple practice. When brushing your teeth, just brush. When washing dishes, just wash. When you hear birds, just listen. Don't think, will it rain tomorrow? Each time you do this, you're not just being mindful, you're truly living. Tonight, before sleep, you might try. Place your hand on your chest. Breathe in. Silently say, this is the in breath. And breathe out. Silently say, this is the out breath. And not to heal, not to succeed at meditation, just to be here. And then, you'll see, that alone is a miracle. One rainy afternoon, a woman in her 40s came to see me. She worked hard, lived responsibly, raised her children, and had never done anything wrong by society's standards. And yet, in a soft voice, she said to me, I still feel not enough, not smart enough, not beautiful enough, not successful enough, and sometimes not enough to be loved. Is one. I asked her, who told you that? She was silent for a long time. Then she exhaled. No one, but I've always believed it. And over the years, I've met hundreds of people carrying the same wound, the feeling of not being enough. And strangely, it's often the kindest, most thoughtful, most sensitive people. Perhaps it's because they are so sensitive. They hear that quiet whisper more clearly. You're still not good enough. And it doesn't need to be spoken aloud. It's built from glances, unspoken expectations, careless childhood comparisons. It grows quietly until it becomes the default room we live in. No windows, no light. Zen doesn't try to prove you're better. It doesn't need you to become some ideal version. Zen simply hands you a clear mirror undistorted and says, look, this is you right now. Nothing more, nothing less, nothing to fix. When the Buddha taught right view, he wasn't only speaking about understanding the world. He was also speaking of a clear, unclouded view. When we look at ourselves, you are not a mistake. You are not a rough draft that needs correcting. You are a living phenomenon unfolding like a cloud, a bird call, a blade of grass. No cloud needs to be better. It just needs to float its own way. I shared with that woman a simple image. Have you ever seen a 2-year-old stumble and fall? They don't blame themselves. They don't call themselves a failure. They cry then, get up, and keep walking. End quote. We've learned how to hurt ourselves with labels given by others, or ones we stuck on ourselves. Maybe it's time to take those labels off. Here's a practice I often share. Write down the harsh sentences you say to yourself over and over. I'm so useless. End quote. I have nothing special. End quote. I always let people down. End quote. Then imagine saying those words to a crying 5-year-old inside you. Could you? If not, why do you say them to yourself every day? Self-acceptance isn't resignation. It's the first fertile ground from which anything true can grow. Only from there can you change to please anyone else, but to live more honestly, more freely. Tonight, before sleep, look into the mirror just once. not to check your skin, your hair, your shape, just to say one sentence like, speaking to an old friend, I'm not perfect, but today, I lived more true to myself than yesterday. 2. And if a voice in your head says, still not enough, smile gently and reply, thank you, but today, I don't believe you anymore. Indus. One early morning, I received a message from a friend. I don't want to do anything anymore. Everything feels heavy. Everyone feels exhausting. I don't want to cry. I'm not happy either. I just feel numb. Indus. I asked, when was the last time you truly rested? They were silent, then replied, I don't really know. Indus. There's a strange kind of tiredness, no sharp pain, no illness, no major life crisis, just waking up with a heart that feels like it's buried beneath a stone. This is not laziness. Oh, not lack of will. Oh, this is inner exhaustion burnout that many people experience without ever naming it. Because we've tried for too long, been strong for too long, pretended to be fine for too long. Modern life doesn't lack supplements, self-help books, or sleep apps, but it lacks one essential thing, the art of resting without feeling guilty. Zen doesn't teach us to escape, but meditation gently says, if you've gone too far from yourself, then stopping is not failure. It is a return. End of quote. I once meditated with a middle-aged woman. For 20 minutes. She couldn't sit still. Her hands fidgeted. Legs shifted. Eyes opened and closed. Afterward, she said, Teacher, I don't think I know how to be still. End of quote. I told her, that's okay. Today, you've just discovered the most important thing. End of quote. Rest is not just the absence of doing. It is the pause in becoming, the pause in proving, the pause in fixing, even the pause in healing. Just to sit here, breathe and know that you're alive. There's a simple yet powerful Zen practice, just sitting, not meditating to reach a state. Oh, not to gain insight. Oh, just sit like a tree. Not rushing to grow, not straining to stretch, just standing there quietly absorbing light. Tonight, I invite you to try. Turn off all devices 30 minutes before sleep. Sit quietly on your bed. No reading, no listening, no thinking. Place your hand on your chest. Close your eyes and softly say, doing nothing is also doing something. And tonight, I choose to be with myself in the gentlest way. End quote. You don't need to rest to become more productive. You rest because you deserve peace. Even if you've accomplished nothing today, tiredness is not a fault. But pushing through endlessly without noticing your fatigue, that is what leads to collapse. I often get angry at my partner, angry at my parents, angry at myself. But after every burst of anger, I feel empty, as if I've broken something that can't be fixed. End quote. I asked, have you ever tried to sit down instead of lashing out when you're angry? He shook his head. I don't have time. It comes too fast. End quote. I nodded and said, because you haven't yet realized, anger doesn't come from the outside. It's a wounded child inside, you seeking someone to listen. End quote. Anger is not bad. It's just a strong stream of energy rising when something is touched, a boundary, a belief, an old, unhealed fear. It's like boiling water in a kettle if not noticed in time. It spills over and scalds everyone nearby. Insane. When anger arises, we don't speak. We don't run away. We also don't try to breathe deeply to get rid of it. We stay with the anger with presence. Like when a child is crying, we don't scold, push away, or abandon. We simply hold them with a non-judging embrace. I taught him a simple practice. When you're angry, don't say anything. Place your hand on your chest. Breathe not deeply. Just steadily. Say inwardly, "Hello, anger. I see you. What are you trying to tell me?" He tried it. It wasn't easy, but after a few weeks, he came back and said, "I realized that every time I'm angry, I'm actually sad." And anger is often the outer layer of an unnamed wound. Some people are angry because they feel abandoned. Some because they feel disrespected. Some because they carry a child inside who was never protected. Another student once said, "I often get angry at my mother because she's controlling and judgmental. But when I really stop to listen, I realized she's just worried. She just doesn't know how to love in a language I can understand." Since then, whenever her mother says something harsh, instead of getting angry, she takes a breath and asks, "Mom, what are you afraid of from me?" That question didn't suppress the anger. It transformed it into true connection. Zen doesn't turn you into someone who never gets angry. And Zen helps you recognize anger right when it begins, so you can pause like a step before entering a dark room. One practice I love: breathe with your anger like breathing with a thundercloud. Don't try to chase it away. Just wait for it to pass. And often, after a few breaths, you begin to see more clearly what's really going on inside. Tonight, if you're angry with someone, try writing them a letter. Don't send it. Just write. Not to blame, but to express what your anger is really needing. I felt hurt when I'm afraid that I long to be understood like this. Oh, then put the letter away in a drawer. Maybe tomorrow you won't need it anymore, because what needed to be said has been spoken to yourself. Anger, when understood, is no longer a storm. It becomes a sign that a part of you is longing to be touched gently. A student once shared with me after a meditation session, "I'm afraid to start something new. I'm afraid to fail. But what I fear more is people seeing me fail." I asked, "If no one was watching, would you still try?" He stayed silent for a long time. Then he nodded. Often, we're not afraid of failure itself. Failure if it happens alone, in a quiet forestus, just an attempt that didn't work. What really hurts uses the gaze, the judgment, the cold silence from others. We fear being judged. We fear not being good enough. We fear we won't be worthy of love if we don't do things right, if we don't succeed. Zen doesn't teach us to be reckless, nor does it force us to leap before we're ready. Zen simply invites us to ask, who is defining my worth? If it's an external standard, then perhaps we're living like actors in our own lives, not as our true selves. I once told that student a story about bamboo. Bamboo doesn't shoot up overnight. For the first few years, it barely grows because it's silently building roots. Its roots reach deep and far, and when ready in just a few weeks, it can grow meters high. Your delay isn't laziness. It might be your rooting phase. And if you stop just because others can't see that process, then you've abandoned yourself for a gaze that doesn't understand you. I have failed. More than once. I've stood on stage and forgotten my lines. I've written a book no one read. I've hosted a talk where only 3 people showed up. And strange aloud, of those rejections, I found my true voice, no longer one to please others, but one I could live with without regret. Here's a small practice for you. Write down 3 things you want to try but haven't dared. Next to each one, write, what am I most afraid of if I do this? Then write, if that fear actually happens, could I still go on living? Most of the time, we'll find the fear is a shadow larger than the truth. There's a Zen saying I love. A practitioner doesn't need to overcome fear. Just walk with it with mindful steps. Oh, you don't need grand courage. Just one more step even, if your heart still trembles. And with each step you are living for yourself. Tonight, if you feel like giving up something not because you don't love it, but because you're afraid no one will support you, then I invite you to pause, take a breath, and ask, if I were a 5-year-old child afraid of being laughed at, what would I need to hear right now? Perhaps it's simply, I don't need to be great right away. I just need not to abandon myself. And 1, rejection is not a definition. It's just a response from a person, a situation, a moment that didn't align, but you, at your deepest root, are still you know less. An older student once sat across from me, eyes deep like a dry well, and said, I don't hate that person anymore, but every time I remember, my heart tightens. I don't know how to truly forgive. I asked, what do you think forgiveness is? She remained silent. After a while, she exhaled. It's letting go, forgetting, not hurting anymore. And I gently shook my head. No, forgiveness isn't forgetting. Forgiveness is stopping that wound from holding your life hostage. We'll often misunderstand that if we forgive, we're denying the pain we've endured. That if we forgive, we've lost. That if we forgive, we're excusing what was wrong. But Zen invites us to see differently. Forgiveness is not an act. It's a process of returning to ourselves. A wound, if not tended, turns into a hardened scar. The more we refuse to look at it, the longer it stays. The harder we try to forget, the more it shows up when we're most vulnerable. Zen doesn't ask us to be noble. Zen simply invites us to sit down very gently and face the pain as we would sit with an abandoned child. I shared with her an image. Imagine carrying a bag of stones on your back for 10 years. Maybe you've forgotten how heavy it is because you're used to it, but it's still quietly misaligning your spine, weighing down your shoulders, tiring you out without you knowing why. And 1, forgiveness sometimes is simply putting that bag down, not because it never existed, but because you don't need to carry it anymore. Here's a practice I often share. Write down the name of the person you haven't forgiven, even if it's yourself. Write what happened as a story, without judgment. Then write, how did I hurt? How did I continue living? Today, I choose to stop carrying this knot so someone else can rest, but so I can feel lighter. After doing that practice, one student wrote a letter to her mother, not to send, but to say what had never been said. You didn't protect me from the pain I went through as a child, but today, I choose to let go of this anger not for you, but because I want to go on without this stone in my heart. She read the letter in tears. Then she smiled, not because everything was okay, but because she felt a little lighter, just enough to move on. Forgiveness is not the ending. It's just a pause where you return to yourself the right to live without straining, without holding on, without pretending to be strong. Tonight, you might try a small act. Close your eyes Call that person's name in your heart and whisper, I haven't forgotten what happened, but I'm learning not to let it bind me anymore. M. Forgiveness in the eyes of Zenus, not a task for the mind. It is an act of a heart, learning to love itself. A woman in her early 50s shared during a tea meditation session, I have a family and friends, a job, but I don't understand why. Every night, when I turn off the lights, I feel an eerie emptiness. I feel like a small island, unreachable by anyone. Endert, I asked, when was the last time you sat with yourself without trying to do anything? She remained silent, then softly replied, I don't remember anymore. I'm sad. We live in an age of instant connectivity, yet it's perhaps the loneliest era in human history. You might be living with someone, sleeping beside someone, working among many people, but inside you still feel as if no one truly reaches you. No one understands. No one stays. No one sees you beneath the neat and composed exterior. Zen doesn't promise to bring someone else to fill that void. Zen simply invites you to return and sit beside yourself. Not to do anything, not to become better. Just to be present. I once spent a period living in a remote mountain area. No phone, no family, no work. At first, I felt empty, sad, as if the whole world had forgotten me. But then, on a very quiet afternoon, I sat on an old stone slab in front of a small hermitage, watching the clouds drift by, and realized, oh, it turns out I was never truly alone. The sky is with me, the wind, the trees, the birdsong, the breath, they are with me, and I am returning to myself. Loneliness in the view of Zenus, not something wrong. It's an invitation for you to meet again your dearest friend, long unspoken to, yourself. A practice I deeply cherish when feeling lonely. Light a candle. Sit quietly beside it as you would with a friend. No phone, no music, no reading. Just gaze at the light and breathe. Then gently ask within, is there a part of me longing to be heard? It might be an old sorrow, something you've never dared to say, a forgotten desire. You don't need to heal it. Just listen and be present. Tonight, if you feel an emptiness in your heart, I invite you to do something very simple. Place your hand over your heart. Whisper, I am here. I won't abandon you even if the whole world turns away. That presence though, unassuming is the thread connecting you to life. And strangely, when you truly stay with yourself, loneliness gradually dissolves like mist revealing something softer, a peace that requires no conditions. One morning, I sat in a cafe, observing the surroundings. At the table next to mine, a young couple was having a conversation, yet both occasionally glanced down at their phones. A mother was feeding her child while replying to messages. A man was reading a book, but every few pages, his hand reached out to tap like on social media. No one was doing anything wrong. It's just that no one was fully present with what they were doing. A student once asked me, Master, why do I always feel busy? Yet at the end of the day, I don't feel like I've truly lived. I smiled and asked, are you doing many things at once? He nodded. Always. Listening to music while studying, scrolling Facebook while eating, replying to emails while talking to my girlfriend. I said, each time you do that, you are stepping out of the house of mindfulness. And when you return, there's no one left home to welcome you. End quote. In Zen There's a profound yet simple principle. One moment, one thing. End quote. When washing the dishes, just wash the dishes. When walking, just walk. When listening to someone, just listen. You don't need to appear mindful. You just need to truly be present with what's happening. Scattered attention is not a personal failing. It's the result of a world designed to capture your focus. Every app, every notification, every ad wants a piece of you. A second, a click, a fleeting glance. And if you don't know how to guard your attention the way you guard your breath, you'll be pulled along day after day without even realizing what you're losing. I once practiced a week of attention retreat. No phone. No internet. No multitasking. Just eating when eating. Just reading when reading. Just speaking only when needed. The result wasn't that I accomplished more. It was that each act became more alive. I could truly taste the salt in food, to hear the wind rustle through the window, and feel my heart return. Here's a simple yet effective practice. Choose one daily activity, like drinking tea, brushing your teeth, or walking. Decide for 5 minutes. I will do nothing else. Whenever your mind wanders, gently call it back. Come back. This alone is enough. Oh, tonight, try this. Set your phone down 30 minutes before sleep. Just sit quietly or lie down with no music. No screens. Breathe in, knowing you're breathing in. Breathe out, knowing you're breathing out. And whisper to yourself, I don't need to go anywhere to find peace. I only need to be here. Your attention is the most precious asset you have. Don't let it be scattered every day. Gather it and offer it to each moment that truly matters. A young student spoke to me after the morning meditation. Master, life feels so dull. Every day is the same. Wake up, work, eat, sleep. Nothing new, nothing interesting. I asked, have you ever truly looked at a flower for a long time? He chuckled. I don't have time for such poetic things. I nodded, and perhaps that's why everything feels more and more bland. We often assume boredom is the fault of our circumstances. The job isn't stimulating enough. Life lacks surprises. The person beside us has become too familiar. But Zen invites a different question. Maybe it's not that life is repeating, but that our way of seeing has lost its freshness. In Zen, there's a practice called beginner's mind. And it means, even if you've done something 1,000 times, this time you approach it as if it's your first, like a child seeing snow for the first time, hearing cicadas for the first time, holding the hand of someone they love for the first time. Their eyes light up. Their heart opens. Every moment is an unseen miracle. I once sat alone eating rice in my hermitage. No phone, no music, no stories. Just the quiet sound of rice being chewed, the scent of boiled greens rising like smoke, the afternoon sunlight grazing the edge of the table. And in that moment I understood, life is never short of wonder. We've just stopped looking with the eyes of someone seeing it for the first time. Oh, a student once shared with me, I used to think being in love for a long time would become boring. But after practicing beginner's mind, and for me, I tried to look at my partner as if I'd never met them before. And what happened was, I noticed things I'd never paid attention to. The way they yawn, the way they fold towels, the way they whisper when they're happy. And suddenly, I loved them again as if we just met yesterday. Boredom, often, is not the absence of something new. It's that we've been moving too fast, so we don't see the old things that are still changing. Even a falling leaf never falls the same way twice. Tonight, you might try this. Do something very familiar with beginner's mind. Brush your teeth. Really feel every movement. Drink water. Truly sense the cool flow down your throat. Look at a loved one's face as if it's your first meeting after a year apart. You don't need to travel far to find novelty. You only need to return to your eyes before they were clouded by fatigue and expectations. Life is not a series of surprises for you to consume. It's a symphony, and you'll hear its wonder only if you sit still long enough. A young student once shared with me, his eyes red with emotion. I work hard. I try to live kindly, but I always feel like I need someone to notice it. If not, I feel invisible, like I don't exist. And I looked at him for a long moment, then asked, if everyone turned away, would you still know you're alive? He lowered his head in silence, and a single tear fell onto the clenched hand resting on his lap. We are born with a very natural need to be seen, to be heard, to be acknowledged. There's nothing wrong with that. But if our entire life depends on others' gaze to define our worth, we'll live like a mirror, only bright when light from outside shines upon it. When no one looks, we dim. When no one praises, we doubt ourselves. When criticized, we collapse. Zen doesn't ask you to abandon the need for recognition. Zen simply poses a deeper question. Can you see yourself even when no one else does? I shared an image with a student. There are flowers that bloom deep in the forest, unseen by anyone, yet they still bloom, still release their fragrance. Still fall, still become soil to nourish other trees, because they don't bloom for applause. They bloom because that is their nature. And you are the same. You don't need recognition to have value. You already have value simply because you're breathing, you're living, you're here. A simple practice I often suggest: each night before bed, write down 3 things you did that no one noticed. Today, I didn't lose my temper with a coworker. And 1, I ate lunch without rushing. And 1, I picked up a fallen leaf from the windowsill. And 1, when you write, I don't think of them as trivial, because in that moment, you are the first and perhaps the only one to truly acknowledge yourself. A middle-aged woman once told me, I've lived my whole life trying to be praised for being good, being smart, being lovable, but I'm tired. I want to live without needing praise. I just want to be myself without shame. And I smiled and replied, that's the first step to real freedom. And tonight, try this. See quietly. Close your eyes. Place your hand over your heart and whisper, I see you, even if no one praises you today. Even if no one knows how hard you tried. I know. And when you learn to stay with yourself like a friend who doesn't judge, every gaze from the outside becomes lighter. And you'll see, I don't need to stand out to be worthy of existence. And I just need to be true so I don't lose myself. And a woman shared with me during an afternoon meditation session, I once broke a relationship, not because I meant to hurt the other person, but because, at the time, I didn't understand myself. I reacted instead of responding with compassion. Years have passed, and though it's all behind me, deep down, I still hear a voice. I should have done it differently. A vox. I asked her, if you had known then what you know now, would you have chosen differently? She nodded, her eyes glistening. I smiled. Then guilt has already taught you something. It doesn't need to stay forever. Guilt is a hard emotion to touch because it's the fusion of pain and self-blame. Unlike regret, which looks back to learn, guilt is like sticking a label on your forehead and never taking it off. Zen doesn't deny that emotion. Zen simply asks, what does that feeling need from you? A correction? An apology? Or just a hug for the younger self in you who didn't know better? I shared an image with her. Imagine guilt as a child, soaked in the rain, shivering outside your door. It doesn't need more scolding. It needs the door to be opened, to be dried off, and gently asked, how scared were you when that happened? You don't have to avoid responsibility. You just need to add compassion so that the learning becomes tender. A practice I often invite students to do. Write down the story that made you feel guilty, as if you're telling it to a child. No judgment, no excuses. Just tell it. Then write a letter from your present self to that past version of you. I know you did something wrong, but I also know you didn't mean to. And I'm here, so you don't have to carry this alone anymore. Guilt doesn't vanish in an afternoon, but if you see it as a forgotten friend, instead of an enemy to be banished, it softens. And then, something strange begins to happen. Instead of running away from guilt, you begin to learn self-compassion. And tonight, if there's something inside you you haven't yet forgiven, try this. Place your hand over your heart. Close your eyes. Whisper, I am not perfect, but I am learning, and I refuse to keep punishing myself the way others once did. You are not your mistakes. You are the one walking through them, carrying the light of understanding and compassion. A fellow practitioner shared with me during a group meditation session, I can't stop thinking. I meditate. I breathe, but my mind keeps running. What if I fail? What if I'm not good enough? What if something terrible happens? These thoughts keep coming back, as if I can never get rid of them. Oh, I smiled and said, you don't need to get rid of them. You just need to learn to sit with them without serving them tea. Oh, in Zen, we don't treat thoughts as enemies, nor do we see an empty mind as some ultimate state we must force ourselves to attain. We simply practice recognizing and gently letting go, not chasing, no clinging, just seeing clearly and allowing things to pass. I've often compared my mind to a river. Sometimes the water is clear. Sometimes it's full of fallen leaves. Sometimes storms bring in debris from who knows where. But what I've learned through meditation is this. The river doesn't need to do anything to be itself again, other than not grabbing more mud. One student once told me, I thought I had to think more positively, but the more I forced myself to be cheerful, the more exhausted I felt. Because deep inside, I was still scared, still confused. And, I replied, being positive doesn't mean denial. It means recognizing both light and shadow and still choosing to walk gently. And there are thoughts you'll never cure. And they will return like old clouds drifting over the roof of your home. But each time you stop believing them as absolute truths, you're giving yourself a profound power, the power to be free even while your mind is full of noise. A very simple practice. Whenever a negative thought appears, give it a name, as if greeting a visitor. Hello? Old fear. Or next, hello? Worry about the future. Or next, hello? Self-critical voice. Or next, then breathe in aware of the in-breath. Breathe out aware that the thought is a passing cloud, not the whole sky, and whisper, I don't have to believe everything my mind says. And so, I once had a very dark day. My head was filled with endless questions. Does anyone need me? Am I wasting my time? Where am I even going? I sat down and wrote out every question. Didn't dilate. Didn't argue. And beneath each one, I wrote, thank you for showing up. But today, I choose not to walk with you. And so, tonight, if your mind is noisy, try this. Light a candle. Sit quietly beside it as if sitting with a chatty friend. Each time a negative thought arises, simply say in your heart, I see you. I'm still here. Or cry. Don't push it away. Don't analyze. Just see. And gently let it float by like clouds across the sky. You don't need a perfect mind to live peacefully. You just need eyes kind enough not to fight yourself. One autumn afternoon, I was having tea with a man in his 40s, successful and confident in appearance. But after sitting quietly for a while, his voice softened, like that of a child. Teacher, if I no longer do this job, if I'm no longer a husband, a father, a successful man, then who am I? I didn't respond. I simply poured more tea into his cup and asked, have you ever drunk tea without knowing the name of the leaf? He gave a shy smile. Never thought about it. I said, the leaf is still fragrant, even if we don't know whether it's lotus or jasmine. And you too, you are still alive, even if you don't yet know your name. We live in a society that constantly urges us to label everything. I'm a doctor. I'm a mother of two. I'm an introvert. I'm someone who failed at marriage. Over time, those labels don't just help others understand us. They cause us to forget that we once existed without them. And then, one day when the job is gone, when roles change, when life shifts direction, we feel empty, not because we've disappeared, but because we no longer know how to be present without playing a part. In Zen, there is a quiet practice. Sit without needing to be anyone. End quote. Not a meditator, not someone who must be peaceful, not someone aiming for achievement, just a being who breathes, who is present with kindness. I went through a long period where I did nothing at all. No teaching, no writing, no structured schedule. Each morning I'd wake, look out at the garden, see wildflowers blooming, birds singing, clouds drifting, and I'd ask myself, am I useless? Then one day, I saw a cat lying in a patch of sunlight on the windowsill, doing nothing, producing nothing, just lying there whole and at peace. And in that moment, I smiled. I'm still alive, and that alone is enough. Oh, another one of my students, a retired woman, once said, for 40 years, I was a teacher, but ever since I retired, it feels like I've lost a part of myself. I wake up in the morning not knowing what I'm meant to do. I don't know if I'm useful anymore. In 10, I invited her to join the morning, sitting without any goal, just to sit. After 3 weeks, she wrote to me, Teacher, today I sat, and for the first time in years, I heard the sparrows behind my garden. I realized I don't need to teach someone to be of value. Just knowing I'm here is already something precious. Oh, a practice you can try. Write down 3 roles you often attach to yourself. I'm someone who's always strong. Oh, I'm someone who lives for others. Oh, I'm an introvert. Per F failure, per S success. Then breathe in and gently ask, if those roles were to fall away, what remains? And respond, like a whisper, I am someone who is breathing, someone who can sit in stillness without needing to prove anything. Oh, you don't need to rush to find a new definition. You just need not lose touch with that silent presence, where you are always yourself, beyond all labels. Tonight, if you find yourself lost in the list of things undone, roles not yet fulfilled, I invite you, turn off the lights, sight down, no meditation technique needed. Just let your body rest and softly say, I am me. I don't need to be perfect. I don't need to be fully understood. I don't need to play a role. I am alive, and that is enough. One afternoon during the retreat, I was walking through the small garden of the Zen monastery. The wind gently rustled through the trees. A few leaves drifted down, and I happened to overhear two practitioners talking. The younger one was quietly recounting a difficult day, a hidden weariness behind a cheerful mask. The other simply placed a hand on his shoulder and said, I see you're trying, and I think you're doing better than you believe. Nothing more. Just a sentence, but I saw the first one's eyes soften, his shoulders relax, a deeper breath, and I thought, sometimes a kind word is meditation. We live in an age full of words, yet so lacking in words that nourish. Social media helps us share faster, but also makes our words easier to toss, easier to forget, easier to harm. A single joke can leave a lasting scar. A careless criticism can make someone withdraw for days. But likewise, a gentle sentence spoken at the right moment can be a bridge between despair and grounding in Zen. There is a precept called right speech, not only speaking the truth, but also not speaking to harm, not speaking frivolously, not speaking divisively, and deeper still, speaking what nourishes, which means, before speaking, we pause for one breath to ask, does this need to be said? Will this nurture someone? Or is it just a reflex? Spoken from the unconscious? I once met a middle-aged man who was quiet throughout a tea meditation, but after everyone left, he came to me and said, did you know, when I was little, I lived with a very strict father all my childhood. I just wish to hear him say once, I'm proud of you. I bless, but he never did. Even though I studied hard, worked well, had a family, and when he passed away, that sentence had still never been said. Then his voice broke. Some words, if not spoken in time, become lifelong wounds. We often think kindness means doing something big, but sometimes a word at the right time can save someone. A former student once told me, there was a time I was about to end my life, but that same day, a friend sent me a message. I don't know how you're doing, but if today is hard, I'm sitting next to you in spirit. End of sex. That message saved me. Not because it solved my problems, but because it reminded me I wasn't invisible. Ender 2. Kindness doesn't need a script. It just needs you to notice the tired cashier and say, thank you. It must be a busy day. Ender 2. Send a message to an old friend for no reason. I thought of you today. I hope you're doing well. Others, see your child come home and instead of asking, how many marks, say, thank you for coming home. Oh, a simple practice. Each morning, before your day begins, write down one name. Think of something you appreciate about them, no matter how small. Send a message or say it out loud. Don't wait for a special occasion. Don't wait for perfection, because a kind heart doesn't need to wait. Tonight, you might try something simple. Open a notebook or your phone. Write a kind sentence for yourself. Maybe something like, I know you've tried hard. Even if today didn't go smoothly, you chose to keep going. And that is worth recognizing. See, we don't lack beautiful things. We just lack people willing to pause and say them. One afternoon, during a tea meditation, a woman sat across from me, holding a cup of tea, her eyes quietly red. I'm afraid of dying. not just because of the pain, but because I feel like I haven't lived enough, haven't loved enough, haven't done anything truly meaningful. And if I poured more tea into her cup and said, perhaps death doesn't come to frighten us. It comes to remind us that each day we are alive is a miracle, that no one is guaranteed to have tomorrow. And if in Zen, death is not a taboo subject. It is not a tragedy to be avoided. It is a natural part of life, like night following day. Like leaves falling with the seasons, we do not meditate to escape death. We meditate to learn how to live more deeply before death arrives. I once asked a group of practitioners, have you ever sat down and looked at death as a friend? The room was silent. A middle-aged man quietly said, I once lost my father without a chance to say goodbye. Since then, I feared death and the things left unsaid. I replied, then death has already taught you something, to not delay kindness by even a day. Another student, who had gone through a serious illness, shared, back then, each morning I woke and realized I could still breathe. I cried. I began seeing the flowers more vividly, hearing the birds more clearly, even the sound of my mother's sighs in the kitchen. Before, I lived as if I were immortal. Now, I live as if each breath is a gift that may never return. Death, when we stop fearing it, becomes a gentle teacher. It teaches us to say, I love you, while we still can, to forgive while our hearts are still able to open, to smile at our loved ones while they are still sitting beside us. I once sat by the bedside of an elderly woman near the end of her life. She didn't ask me about heaven. She wasn't worried about where she would go. She simply smiled and said, the phrase goodbye is beautiful because it means we were once truly present with one another. End quote. A small practice I love. Each morning, when you open your eyes, place your hand over your heart and ask, if today were my last day, how would I want to live it? Each night, before bed, write down, I am grateful that today I got to live. End quote. Thinking of death doesn't make us somber. It helps us let go of the trivial. You'll find yourself less interested in winning arguments, less eager to postpone dreams, less likely to wait for someday to live as your true self, because someday is not promised to anyone. One student wrote to me after her mother passed, Teacher, when my mom was dying, I just held her hand and whispered, rest easy. Mom, I will live fully for both of us. End quote. And ever since, each morning, I light incense, sit in meditation, and live a little more kindly, as if she's watching me from somewhere peaceful. Oh, you don't need to wait until you're near death to learn how to live. You can begin today by looking at your loved ones as if it's your last encounter, speaking one sincere sentence without holding back, and walking each step grateful that you still can. Tonight, if you have time, look up at the sky. No need to pray. Just inhale, knowing you are still alive. Exhale, knowing you are not alone. And whisper, I'm not afraid of dying. I'm only afraid of not living fully while I still can. One early morning, I sat by the wooden windowsill, where the first sunlight slanted across the stone-paved courtyard. A small Bodhi tree outside gently swayed, and the wind chime rang from afar like a quiet call to return. There was nothing extraordinary, nothing grand. But within me was a deep sense of peace. Peace not because everything was perfect, but because I had learned how to be present with everything, whether beautiful or not. You've walked with me through 29 reflections, each one a doorway into an aspect of the heart. Sometimes it was anger, other times, loneliness. At moments, a lingering question, who am I? And even moments of touching death. We didn't turn away. We didn't try to hide. We simply sat and breathed with it all. An ending, truly, is not a full stop. It's more like a gentle exhale, long, quiet. After a journey of much contemplation, I didn't intend to write a climax or a final explosion. Oh, I only wish for you right now to simply feel yourself, not through my words, but through the breath you're taking in, through the pulse gently beating in your chest, and through your gaze resting on this line with full presence. I remember once, in a meditation class, I asked, "What will you carry with you after this retreat?" One person answered, "I will carry the silence." Oh, I smiled, because in Zen, that silence is the most perfect answer. I don't hope you remember everything you've read. I only hope you remember a sentence that made you feel soothed, an image you want to hold in your heart, a small practice you can return to when life feels turbulent. You don't need to hold on to everything. Just one seed is enough. And one day, that seed will sprout on an afternoon you least expect. If today your heart feels heavy, I hope you won't rush to chase that feeling away. Sit with it as you would sit with a friend carrying a quiet sorrow. If today you feel peace, smile and share that peace with someone who needs it. If today you feel nothing special, that's okay too. The ordinary is also deeply real and deeply human. A student once asked me, "How do I know I've progressed on the path?" I replied, "If today you can be just a bit gentler with yourself than yesterday, even 1%, you've already come a long way." Oh, tonight, if you can, breathe in deeply, breathe out slowly, sit quietly for a while with no goal. Place your hand over your heart and gently whisper, "I am here. I am still learning how to love myself." And that is enough. Oh, then you've completed this journey beautifully. I won't wish you everlasting happiness. I simply wish this. When tired, you know how to rest. When sad, you don't hide it. When in love, you dare to say it. When living, you live truly. And if you can, remind someone of this. You don't need to be perfect to be loved. You only need to be present. I thank you for sitting down, listening, and walking with me through each reflection. If ever your heart grows restless or life pulls you away, please come back here. No permission needed. You'll always be welcomed, like an old friend returning home. I'm still sitting by the wooden windowsill, pouring another cup of tea, quietly listening to the wind, rustling the leaves, and smiling, knowing somewhere out there, you're still on your own path of awakening. Dear friend, so we have just journeyed together through each breath, each story, each quiet space within the heart. Perhaps now, you may feel your heart a little more at ease, or perhaps there are still things that have yet to settle. Either way, this is perfectly natural. In meditation, there is no need to rush toward any destination. And what matters most is that we have been fully present for each moment along the way. If some part of this video has touched you, even just a single sentence, an image, or a fleeting moment that brought a gentle smile to your lips, I hope you will hold it in your heart, like a small seed, and perhaps one day, when you need it most, it will blossom in its own time, in its own way. You do not need to become enlightened, and you do not need to become someone else. You only need to return more fully to yourself, gently, little by little, like the way a flower blooms unhurried, without needing to be urged. I am deeply grateful that you chose to sit with me through this entire journey. If this video has brought even a small sense of peace to your heart, please feel free to share it with those you love. For who knows, perhaps they, too, are in need of a space to pause and breathe. And if you wish to continue walking this path with me, feel free to subscribe, or simply return here whenever your heart seeks a place of calm. I will always be here by the wooden doorway, beside a still warm cup of tea, awaiting the sound of your footsteps returning, wishing you a truly gentle night, a deep, restful sleep, and in the days ahead, many more moments where you can simply be yourself. Until we meet again.